Every day, your fingers come into contact with a multitude of surfaces: a coffee cup, the door handle, a computer keyboard. Our fingerprints leave behind a unique signature every time we touch something that can be tied to no one else. Each person's fingerprints are unique. No two people have the same set of fingerprints, not even identical twins. This fact is useful for a lot of reasons. It can help with security concerns, identify victims of a mass disaster, or even ensure you are the only person who can use your smartphone. It is, of course, also useful in criminal investigations when the culprit leaves behind their unique fingerprint signature at the crime scene. The discovery that everyone has a unique set of fingerprints has been extremely useful to law enforcement and has been used for over 100 years now. Analysis and technology has improved since the usefulness of fingerprinting was discovered, but the concept remains unchanged. Knowing that everyone will leave behind something unique to them at a crime scene is invaluable. It has been used to link a suspect to a crime scene, link two crime scenes together that may have the same perpetrator, track someone's criminal history, or provide compelling evidence in court when trying to convict someone for a crime. Fingerprints are found at the fingertips and the tip of the thumb. They are made up of raised portions or ridges, which are the part that comes into contact with surfaces. The rest of the fingerprint is made up of creases or recessions. The palm of your hand, toe tips, and footprints also have unique ridges and creases, but these are less often in contact with surfaces. As a result, they are rarely used in criminal investigation or for identification purposes. There are three main kinds of ridge patterns: the arch, the loop, and the whorl. We will now go into a little bit more detail about each type of pattern. The arch has a wave-like pattern and has two subtypes: the plain arch and the tented arch. Tented arches rise to a sharper point, whereas plain arches are smoother. Arches are rare. Only 5% of all fingerprints are arches. The loop is more common. About 60% of all fingerprints are loops. These patterns curve back on themselves to form a loop shape. There are two subtypes of loop too. A radial loop points towards the thumb of the individual. An ulnar loop points towards the pinky finger. Finally, the whorl makes up about 35% of all fingerprints. These patterns are circular in form. They sometimes look like spirals or whirlpools. There are four types of whorl pattern: plain whorls with concentric circles, central pocket loops, which are a loop with a whorl on the end, a double loop where two loops can create an S-shaped pattern, and an accidental loop, which is irregular in shape. There are two underlying premises that fingerprint analysis relies on. The first is uniqueness. To this day, no two people have been discovered with the same fingerprints, or the same fingerprint on multiple fingers. The second premise is persistence or permanence. Research shows that a person's fingerprints remain essentially unchanged for their whole life. If one finger is damaged, it will heal with the same fingerprint appearing. It is rare that damage is serious enough to entirely remove a fingerprint. Fingerprints will transfer almost to any solid surface, including skin. There are three categories that analysts use to describe fingerprints based on the surface they were found on. The first are fingerprints found on soft surfaces, such as soap, wet paint, wax, and so on. These tend to be three-dimensional and need to be lifted off using a plastic mold. The second type is patent or visible prints. These are usually made when the individual has touched dirt, ink, paint, or something like blood. These can be documented using high-resolution photography. The last type is latent prints. These are not visible and are formed when the body's natural oils and sweat on skin are deposited onto another surface. These need to be lifted by applying or dusting a dark or bright-colored powder onto the latent print so that it sticks to the oil. Then the powder can be collected with a clear, adhesive strip. Analysis is usually performed by law enforcement agencies or crime laboratories, though there are private companies that can also step in when there is a backlog or a need for a second opinion. Analysts will compare the unknown print from the crime scene to prints from the person or persons believed to be the culprit by the police. Analysts will use a small magnifier called a loupe to view the tiny details, or minutiae, of a print. They will also use a pointer called a ridge counter to count the number of friction ridges, the ridges that come into contact with the surface the person touches. ACE-V is an acronym used by analysts to reach a determination for each print. This stands for Analysis, Comparison, Evaluation, and Verification. The analysis stage involves assessing a print to see if it is sufficiently clear and complete to be used for comparison purposes. If there is insufficient quality or quantity of features available, they will determine it is not useful for making comparisons. During the comparison stage, the known and unknown fingerprints are viewed side by side. The analysts will compare the minutiae characteristics and their locations to see if they match. The evaluation stage requires the analyst to decide if the prints are from the same source or different sources. If the samples are poor quality, have too few comparable surface areas, or an insufficient number of dissimilar or corresponding features to be certain about the match decision, the analysts may determine that the results are inconclusive. Finally, verification is the last stage. Another examiner will be sent to the same fingerprint samples and asked to perform the same analysis. If they conclude the same, then the results are verified. If they conclude differently, then the first examiner may be wrong and further analyses are required. Often the known fingerprints are obtained using the FBI's Integrated Automated Fingerprint Identification System, referred to as AFIS for short. This is the largest fingerprint database in the world and has more than 72 million print records from criminals, military personnel, government and civilian employees. There are other fingerprint databases too, but this is the most comprehensive in the world. Now we will look at a few examples. These two fingerprints are both tinted arches, and the analysis stage of examination would probably result in a conclusion that a comparison is possible. Both prints are fairly pristine and complete. The print on the left in this example is from a crime scene. As you can see, it is not pristine. Rather, it is fairly blurred and missing a lot of detail from the left side of the print. However, an expert would probably still be able to perform a comparison. There is sufficient quality and quantity here to make a match decision. The print on the left again here is from a crime scene. The print is quite blurred and is only a partial print. This case would be a more borderline example. Examiners may not be able to pick out enough minutiae to make a comparison here. Thank you very much for listening. We wish you well in your future study of fingerprint analysis.